How would I get to this Keeslar's?
Oh, well, from here you just take that little trail right up back yonder, and it only takes about 10 minutes if you don't get lost. But you shouldn't go up there now, not in this weather.
Rain was really important, I felt like, especially, as the film builds. We needed to have some type of way of controlling the weather. And in order to do that, we had to have rain towers. And anybody will tell you that when you make an independent, low-budget film, never have rain in a scene. The reason you don't want to do that is because it can cause problems. Water, first of all, you got to have a source for the water. Now, there just happened to be a stream, a free-running stream that was in front of the cabin that we were able to access. We were able to sub-pump that water right out of the creek and then spray it back out onto our talent. But the negative part about that was it was very, very cold water. It was ice-cold water.
You're trapping me here!
The other thing is that it creates, water has to go somewhere. When it rains, it goes into the ground, which is great. If it rains for 2 or 3 minutes a day or whatever, the water absorbs into the ground and everybody can go out and everything's hunky-dory within a few hours. But if you're shooting a scene where you have raining for 6 hours or 7 or 8 hours and it's constantly having to rain, stop raining, the water doesn't have a place to have time to sort of absorb into the ground. So what it does is it creates a soup. And that's exactly what we had. For the last couple of days of shooting at the cabin, the front yard was just, it was a swamp of just mud.
Studios are for sissies. On location, no vacation. Word.
It was just a nightmare. It was like working in those dreams you have where you're running up the steps and you're trying to get away from somebody and your feet are sticking into the steps. It's like you just can't seem to get anywhere, and that's exactly what it was like trying to shoot in the rain.
Now stop all this.
Anytime you're shooting a scene where you're having to not only control, the weather, like we were doing, there would be times when it was really raining, and we took advantage of that. The downside to that is that you never know when it's going to stop. So that became a problem. And the other thing is that if it's pouring down raining, but yet God is saying, we got sun, we got bright sun, so we had to constantly tarp our scenes with all types of camo netting and things like that to try to break up the sun so that it didn't look like it was, bright sunny day with rain everywhere. Being able to control the rain and have the rain towers there was just something I never dreamed that we'd be able to pull off. As a matter of fact, right before we started shooting, I really seriously sat down and I thought, I think I'm just going to take the rain out because it's going to be a headache. And it was, but had I taken the rain out, it wouldn't have been the same film.
Checking the gate. Good gate.
Checking the gate. Moving on.
A lot of little things. Unfortunately, it's not really like we can play this as a master because we were having cheap space and time.
And then we had this big scene where Clive comes and decides to blow up the well because Derek is down in there. So we had to have our wonderful set crew build us a mock well that was basically a shell that we could, get it inside, put the camera in, shoot up from, and be able to move it around if we had to. And it had to be safe, but we also had to have something that we could actually, if we blew it up, we weren't going to be destroying somebody's property. Our effects team put together these propane bombs. We did some tests out in the parking lot just to see what the intensity of the fire was going to be. How long was it going to burn? Was it going to set everything on fire? Was it safe? And then the day of the shoot, of course we had to have the rain going, which is one effect, and then we had to have an explosion going on at the same time. And we also had to have one of our lead actors in the scene at the same time, which is always frightening. But Nick is just amazing. Nick would have stood there in the fire if I would have let him. I mean, he's such a madman, he just loves this stuff.
So,
All right, so
Let's just do it. Famous last words.
I know. Nick, when you're doing
Bye, Mom.
we are hot. Extra hot.
What just happened?
Well, we just blew up a well.
We singed Derek's eyebrows, basically. It was beautiful.
I'm coming.
Yeah, it worked great. We did it 2 times, and Scott and Mike nailed it.
How'd it go, Scott?
It went great. If Tony's happy, I'm happy.
My background is working in special effects makeup. That's kind of how I got started in the business. I love doing it. I love playing around with foam and sculpting and doing all these things. I'm not as good as I should be. I knew there was no way that I could even attempt doing the things that I needed done for cold storage. So I brought in Connor McCullough. Connor had done some amazing work. I'd seen some of the stuff he'd done in the past, big fan of his. And Connor knows the genre, he knows the materials, and the nice thing about it is that I also knew the materials and I also knew the process. So I could go to Connor and say, we want this out of silicone, we want this out of foam rubber. All these things that I was aware of, I could talk to Connor, and Connor knew exactly what I wanted. When I was working with Nick on his character, he and I would talk for 6 months before we actually started shooting the film. And I would think about things that Nick would say. Why would Clive do this? Nick and I had worked together on a film in the past called Roadkill. Nick came in and did a small part. We had him for a day, and he played Stupid the Clown. And
Nobody fucks with Stupid the Clown!
so I sort of knew I wanted Nick to do the part, even way back then. And then as I started getting serious about doing the film, I started thinking about Clive's character. And Nick was very good about working with me about what Clive would do, why he would do the things he did, but also thinking about the aesthetic things about the character. Like in the script, we described Clive as having some special boots that one heel was slightly thicker than the other because he had one leg that was shorter than the other. So they're special shoes that he had to wear. And because of those shoes, he would walk like, sort of all kiltered. We also decided, I said, well, if he's got one foot or one leg that's a little bit shorter, what if one of his ears was larger than the other ear? I mean, it's just something so simple and so subtle that most people aren't going to get. But we made this prosthetic ear that we put on one side of his head to just kind of throw him off balance. He probably never really took good care of his teeth. Nick has perfect teeth, so we had Connor make us these prosthetic teeth that Nick wore. It was uppers and lowers. So every day Nick would have to get snapped into these teeth. He also had a set of teeth that had tubing in it, so that whenever there's a scene where Clive takes this razor and he's like trying to clean his teeth, and he actually brushes against part of the gum, and so Connor built these teeth that would bleed. That was just probably one of the creepiest scenes in the film. I think it's hysterical. Most people find it unwatchable.
And now the transformation is complete.
One of the challenges that Connor had is that Luther's character too. Luther needed to be fairly disgusting and oily and greasy, and I did want there to be some boils on his face, all over his body. So Connor did an amazing job of coming up with some prosthetics that would blend right into his skin, and it looked very realistic. And Wendy Bell, our makeup artist, worked in conjunction with Connor, bringing Clive and Luther and all the characters to life. She did an amazing job every day of keeping these characters looking, interesting and grimy, and down to putting stuff on their fingernails and just things that you'll never really truly see. Coloring the teeth so they're off, not quite, as white. Just little tiny things. But Connor did an amazing job with not only Clive's stuff. He did an amazing job with, helping come up with Luther's look. But he also had to take care of all the bodies. We had 3 different bodies that we had to create for Melissa. The first one was just sort of a stunt body that we could throw around for the accident scene. Then he had to come up with another body that was sort of the Melissa starting to lose her beauty body, starting to, skin starting to deteriorate and rot. And then we had sort of our hero dead Melissa body that wasn't quite as, rotted, that we could put in the chair and have Clive talk to.
Well, I wanted to make monsters. I got stuck making dead people.
And then there, of course, there's all the other prosthetics that we did. There's a scene where Clive and Luther are having a fight, and Clive pulls his knife out and decides to pretty much put an end to this fight by severing the ligament in the back of his leg. He did an amazing job of building this leg that was so lifelike. It was just probably the most disgusting things, I think, in the film. It just freaked me out when I saw it. In the end of the film, we had to have a couple of effects that took place, and of course, it's in the rain, in the mud, and running out of light, running out of time. It always seems like when you get to when Connor would come on, I say, okay, Connor, we need this, and you got to hurry fast. You got to do it quick. We're running out of light. But he was a trooper. I mean, I would go to him and say, Connor, man, we only have like 2 hours to do this. Can you pull this off? And they would rush Nick to the makeup trailer. We'd put the prosthetic on, and it looked seamless. It was beautiful, and of course the sun's going down now. So now we have no sun, so our lighting crew and everyone just jumps into gear and starts pulling out all the lights off the truck. We got the mud, we got the rain, we got the prosthetics, we got, everything you should not do, we were doing, but we were able to pull it off.
Action!
So we shot all the stuff with Nick with the stick in his eye. Then we had Connor build a special head. And so what we did was we went back and we shot that. I think it was basically the last day of the shoot. We set up in the parking lot in Mount Holly where our studio was. And we had up a little rain tower and wand, and we had one of our production assistants, and we had the stick, and we had her stab this head. It took a couple times to do, but it was very, very effective when we got it.